Thanks to everyone for coming as we celebrate the Loeb Fellowship's 45th anniversary here at District Hall in the Innovation Center of Boston Seaport. Today, I want to talk about the history of the Seaport and some of the innovative infrastructure improvements that have happened over the past 300 years. They're really quite remarkable. In 2015, today, Boston Seaport is growing exponentially. It's been given the nickname the Innovation District. This district, however, is in a sense the victim of infrastructure decisions made well before a coherent urban design plan could be formulated. Today, I want to examine 4 very innovative projects from our history that have shaped the area and propose a few ideas for the future of the district. This is the cover of Nancy Seashoal's excellent book, Gaining Ground. It's a history of the land-making projects that shaped the city the way it is today. The arrow, of course, shows where we're located, in the middle of what was the Dorchester Flats, a tidal area. Let's look at the patterns of development of Boston over the years. When you see these 2 maps taken from Google, exactly the same scale, same orientation. On the left, of course, downtown Boston, which is a rich tapestry of beautifully scaled streets, squares, residential neighborhoods, and a thriving downtown. And on the right, there's this crisscrossed patch of overscaled roads and buildings that don't do much for the pedestrian experience. This view of Boston's Seaport Boulevard, this street has all the charm of a runway at Boston's Logan Airport. The people that run our airport, the Federal Aviation Administration, has required that no building in the seaport can be over 250 feet. And that's resulted in a number of very kind of short, squat, heavy-looking buildings that don't add a whole lot to the streetscape. I want to talk a little bit about our history and propose that 4 unique people that shaped the way this district looks today. We're going to go way back. You may not recognize any of these people. I'm pulling them from history, and I want to talk about some of the remarkable things they did. Here are their names and their accomplishments. First on the top, Donald Mackay, a designer of clipper ships in the 1860s. William Schertzer, a brilliant engineer who designed something called the Rolling Lift Bascule Bridge around 1910. Fred Salvucci, who initiated, conceived, and got the money for Boston's Big Dig in the 1990s. And Henry Knox, a Revolutionary War hero. Let's start with Henry because he's such a remarkable figure. Let's start with 1775, backing up a bit. This is the seaport, and the city was occupied by 4 huge British men of war and over 5,000 troops living in the city and occupying it. Of course, it was then considered by England as a rebel stronghold. We were anxious to liberate the city. No one knew how until this man came along, Henry Knox, 26-year-old bookseller, who in the winter of 1776 moved 40 cannon from Fort Ticonderoga, crossing 2 rivers, the Hudson and the Connecticut, and installed the cannons on the top of Dorchester Heights. When the British woke up the next morning, they were looking at cannons barely 3,000 yards away that threatened to blow their men of war right out of the water. Knox forced the British out of Boston, and we went on, of course, to cast off the yoke of British rule. By 1868, Boston was a thriving shipping port. The harbor commissioners drew this map in 1868 and established a line that proposed filling in Boston's tide flats and wharfing out so that deep draft ships could unload their cargo right onto the docks and transfer their goods onto railroads. Boston became a very wealthy place for the transshipment of goods. Around the same time, this man, Donald Mackay, was a brilliant naval engineer. In the 1850s, the gold rush was going on in California, and it was imperative that goods be moved as quickly as possible from Boston around Cape Horn to San Francisco. Mackay designed this boat, the fastest sailing ship, fastest clipper ship ever built. Once covered 2,000 miles in 6 days. The Flying Cloud has been called by some people one of the finest pieces of design work by anyone in any culture. Mackay was just a brilliant man, and sadly, his design was no longer used after about 1870 because of declining freight rates and the advance of steam, and the gold rush ended. By 1910, Boston was a thriving seaport. This is the Fan Pier, and it shows how the city was a kind of a machine for moving goods by rail and boat. The Fan Pier, of course, allowed ships to dock right next to railroad sidings, and those goods transferred to rail cars, or down Fort Point Channel, the newly constructed Boston Wharf Company could unload their goods into warehouses that are still with us today. Fortunately, they're good buildings. And look at the tangle of rail yards in the upper right-hand corner of this image. And we're going to talk about Mr. Schertzer next. This is the location of Scherzer's lift bridge. As you can see, the Fort Point Channel necks down to a very narrow channel that leads to South Bay, which is where tons and tons of Boston industries were located. It was imperative that boats get through that narrow channel, and that the railroad tracks be able to cross over the channel, and the bridge lift free of the channel. Scherzer's remarkable counterweight lift bridge swung free of the channel. It was a diagonal crossing. They had to be staggered. And of course, these things just became these wonderful industrial sort of sculptural icons. Many of us in the art community sketched and drew and painted and photographed these fabulous structures. They were sadly torn down. This is a picture I took in about 1998 as the bridge was being dismantled. Many people tried to save it, but it unfortunately met a fate. By 1981, Boston's seaport looked like this. It was basically one huge parking lot. It was essentially abandoned except for a few industries and some fishing boats. In 1981, Fidelity Investments decided to move 1,500 office workers into the renamed Commonwealth Pier, and they called it the World Trade Center. By 1991, we began working on Fred Salvucci's brilliant Big Dig. Fred was able to get money with the help of Tip O'Neill out of Washington, D.C. He masterminded the project. It was one of the biggest and most complex infrastructure projects in the history of the United States. And in the words of one of the engineers on the project, Peter Zook, it was just like giving open heart surgery to a man who's busy playing a set of tennis. These are the tubes that form the Boston's Third Harbor Tunnel. They were built in a shipyard in Baltimore and floated up here on a barge and then finished here at the seaport. This is the tunnel you take when you travel from Logan Airport into the seaport. This is an aerial picture about 1994 showing the approaches being dug for the Big Dig, for the Third Harbor Tunnel. It was a scar that remains with us today, unfortunately. Although much of the tunnel is buried, the ramps and the automobile access remains with us. These are the actual path of the Ted Williams Tunnel approaches. It's extremely complicated set of engineering challenges. And passing underneath the Fort Boyd Channel, which is to the left of this slide, cost literally several $billion because of the complicated intersection of a roadway, a shipping channel, and a subway line. This is the way the seaport looked in 1997, as this scar was ripped through the fabric of the seaport so that these tunnel approaches could be built. This is one of those tunnel tubes moored at the Black Falcon pier and being finished above the waterline, a much safer way to do it. And then the tubes were later moved and sunk to the harbor bottom to form the tunnel. This is a cofferdam that allowed the landside approaches to connect with the Third Harbor Tunnel. A very complicated and a massively scaled infrastructure project. And here we are. This is about 1996. These comparative photographs, the Commonwealth Pier in the old photograph from 1914. Commonwealth Pier was the most advanced freight handling facility of its kind in the world. Railroads threaded into the pier on the ground level, and trucks passed in on an upper level on a viaduct so that goods could be easily transshipped. And here we are. My friend Robert Campbell and I did a series of then and now images of the city. Here we are in 1996 with a bunch of Massport planners, contractors at the just after the Ted Williams Tunnel has opened, and one of the developers, John Drew, who's done work all over the seaport. All right, now that we've looked at some of these innovations that have shaped this district and in some senses threatened it, I want to talk about a few ideas that I think are important for us to think about when we look at the future of this area. We shouldn't be afraid of ruins. Ruins evoke and celebrate our past. To the extent that we can preserve them and in a sense, revere them, we've done something wonderful. Look what happens in Rome. This bridge was built about 800 years ago, and it sits in the middle of the city, and it's a kind of a wonderful reminder of the past. We have bridges like this, the Northern Avenue Bridge on the left, and it's just aching to be restored and made part of what we know has shaped the place we live in. New York has done it. Here's the High Line, picture from 1999 and today. The High Line, incidentally, one of the first people to propose saving it was a photographer named Joel Sternfeld, who I think should get a lot of credit. Here's a thought for the Northern Avenue Bridge. I've spent some time in Italy, and Ponte Vecchio in Florence is an absolutely beautiful place. Why can't this thing be reconstructed with shops on top of it? And last, I want to talk about a potential infrastructure innovation that I hope will save our cities. This is the Google bubble car. It looks like it's kind of an odd little golf cart. It's a self-driving car, has no steering wheel, no gas pedal. You just get in and sit in it. These cars are about 10 years away. They take less than 6 feet of roadway. They're safe. They gang up together and form like little trains and take people, commuters in and out of the city if you want. The number of garages in this Boston would disappear, and they could make travel inside the city safer and faster and more efficient. Here's one more idea. I mentioned these 4 innovative infrastructure solutions. Why don't we connect the monuments that exist? 2 of them exist, Dorchester Heights on the bottom and Donald McKay Memorial out in Castle Island. But why not have one to Salvucci and one to this wonderful rolling lift, and let the seaport understand how these places have shaped where we live today. Thanks everybody for listening to this lecture. I think there's a lot to be done. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the seaport, foster good design, and respect the past. Thank you.